Okay, yesterday we mentioned the Democrats' latest coronavirus relief bill. We've now had about 24 hours to look at it, and it is safe to say it is less about funding coronavirus relief and more about funding their political agenda. Here again is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell earlier today.
The bold new policy from Washington Democrats that will kick the coronavirus to the curb and save American families from this crisis. Here it is. New annual studies on diversity and inclusion within the cannabis industry. Not one study, but two of them. Let me say that again. The Democrats' supposed coronavirus bill includes taxpayer-funded studies to measure diversity and inclusion among the people who profit off of marijuana. The word cannabis appears in the bill 68 times, more times than the word job, and 4 times as many as the word hire. So maybe it's best if House Democrats focus on cannabis studies and leave economics to the rest of us.
Now, here to tell us about what that smoke is coming from the House side of the Capitol is Congressman Scott Perry, who represents Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. He serves on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee as well as the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, thanks so much for the opportunity, and I think you've got it pretty much right. We can just characterize this as the same thing that unfortunately the left always does. It's in this case, it's a run on the bank. $3 trillion more in one bill than we spent in all the other packages combined. And as you already pointed out, 68 times it mentions cannabis. I think it mentions China once, but it does make sure that people that are here illegal foreign nationals, they will get stimulus checks, and there'll be no more deportations. We will bail out all the multi-union pensions that have been mismanaged and are going bankrupt, and we will also start bailing out all the states that have mismanaged their money. And especially if you live in a state that's got a rainy day fund or some proof that there's been strong and appropriate fiscal management, you will be on the hook to take care of all the states that have not done that. So it's completely unfair. It's completely unnecessary. It doesn't fix anything for really anybody, and it's essentially a leftist wish list. And meanwhile, while our country is struggling with the circumstances like we have in Pennsylvania, where we're economically locked down, and we have our seniors dying in elder care facilities. This does nothing to fix those items, and I think those are the items that the American people would really like to focus on and see us focused on.
And let me just point out, although it's probably abundantly clear to our listeners, that all of those items you mentioned are unrelated to the coronavirus. So it has nothing to do that those things happened because of the coronavirus. These things were existing before the coronavirus. As you said, they see this as an opportunity to bail out the states and the local governments that have not been operating with financial integrity and make the states that have been operating the right way pay for the others.
That's exactly what it is. This is a leftist wish list that they can never enact on its own, either at the ballot box or legislatively. So they're taking this opportunity when the country is in crisis to move their policy goals. And now, I will tell you, even though this will likely pass the House tomorrow because obviously the Democrats outnumber the Republicans, we simply can't stop it. This along, by the way, with proxy voting, so they're going to change a couple hundred years of history in our country where we are accounted for when we show up and vote, and everybody knows how we vote. They're going to change the rules so we can vote by proxy. We will oppose that as well, but it will pass, and it won't pass the Senate. It won't even be brought up, and of course the president won't sign it. But they will do is they will pass this bill, and then when they go into negotiation for anything else, they will say, "Now see here, we've already passed this stuff." So that is a reason that we should include this in whatever other bill that we're working on at the time, and that's how these things end up becoming mainstream talking points and policy provisions.
A very important point for our listeners to hear, that while we know that this is not going to see the light of day, in fact, Mitch McConnell saying that this was going to the legislative graveyard, the reality is that is exactly what they do with this when they pass it overwhelmingly, or at least with the majority they have in the House. They'll be able to use this as a gambit in their negotiations. But I want to go back, Congressman Scott Perry, to something you said a moment ago about the elections. That's actually covered in this bill.
Yes.
Believe it or not.
Yes.
What this does changes elections, not just giving money to the states to have elections. It requires 15 days of early voting for federal elections and no excuse absentee vote by mail for all voters. During pandemic, states must automatically mail absentee ballots. It creates an end around to states that have voter ID laws, and it mandates all voters can register the same day and online. Tell me this is about the coronavirus.
No, this is not about the coronavirus. This is about stealing elections. I know you're going to talk a little later about the upset victory in California. And look, they tried it there. They have stolen elections in the past. Unfortunately, Pennsylvania has taken on all this mail-in balloting and other things. I've lived here for a very long time, and one of the things about Pennsylvania on election night is you got to know at the end of the evening who won the election. Now we're probably going to be like these other states that we have to wait a week or two until the liberals get enough votes. They find them in a car trunk somewhere. And you ever notice that the counting never ends until they win, but as soon as they win, then the counting ends? That's what this is all about, federalizing the elections, taking them over, and then making sure they have the options and the abilities to steer the election so that they get the results that they want. Again, has nothing to do with the pandemic, but using the bad situation to further their goals.
I want to play another short clip, this one of Nancy Pelosi yesterday when she was announcing this bill. I can only describe it as bizarre, but I want to play the clip of Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker.
This is an historic challenge and therefore momentous opportunity for us to meet the needs of the American people to save their lives, their livelihoods, and our democracy. 400 years ago, the great poet John Donne wrote, "No man is an island entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Each man's death diminishes me, for I'm involved in mankind. Therefore send now to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee."
I'm not even going to go into that last part, but save the democracy. First off, we have a republic. But how in the world is this going to save the democracy? It might save the Democratic Party, but not the democracy.
No, the democracy is under assault right now, and I get so frustrated with my counterparts on the other side of the aisle, especially when they talk about saving the democracy, not understanding as elected officials in the highest office of the land that we live in a republic, but then also when they throw in there that we're saving lives. I live under the rule of Governor Tom Wolf here, who requires that nursing homes and assisted living facilities take positive COVID-19 patients into their facilities when we know that the most vulnerable in our population are the ones that succumb to it. We've got in some of my counties over a 90% death rate because of that, and they talk about saving lives, and then the next day they'll come out and say that we have to support financially Planned Parenthood. I'm sorry, it just doesn't wash with me, and it's just the same old two-faced rhetoric from the left, and we just really obviously have to be suspect of it.
Congressman Perry, you ticked off another item on their list, and that is this funding could go to Planned Parenthood. All that has been done, in fact, in the Paycheck Protection Program that Congress passed in the CARES Act, that would be extended through December 31st, 2021. But all of the language that excluded Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry would be stricken from this provision. So it would allow the funding to go to Planned Parenthood. And of course, those states that have been operating financially inefficiently many of them fund Planned Parenthood. They would be able to use this money to cover the holes left by the money they gave to Planned Parenthood and other abortion operations.
That's exactly right. And like I said, just to add insult to injury, not only must we be forced to pay in our taxes for things we find morally and just completely objectionable, then they also have to taunt us by saying that if we don't agree with this, if we don't support the HEROES Act,
right,
that we're not for preserving life. Meanwhile, our tax dollars are going exactly to take the most innocent life of all. And just to remind you and your audience, all of these things in this bill, the HEROES Act, where first responders are paid and so on and so forth, all this stuff is meant for messaging in the fall election. So you're going to see a bunch of advertisements that say Representative so-and-so voted against police and voted against nurses that were on the front lines. That's the other side of the unfortunate side of this thing.
Very, very important you point that out, because what is offensive to me about this is that they're passing this on the back of heroes, those who have been out there on the front lines, and they're the recipients of a fraction of this bill. But yet you're absolutely right. This is what will be said in the fall, that those who stood against financial craziness were against the heroes on the front line. Congressman, as always, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your insights and appreciate your stand for freedom.
Well, thank you so much, and God bless you and your audience. Keep fighting.
All right, Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, retired general, brigadier general with the National Guard there in Pennsylvania.